actually why I had to run over here after work really quick, so I smell like barbecue too right now, so I'm sorry about that. Make everybody hungry. Basically, how many of you folks here have ever taken a DNA test before? All right, that's good, that's really good.
They want to know why they're as bad as they are.
Okay, there are pros and cons, and there are a number of different DNA tests out there on the market right now, as you all know. How many of you folks have taken a test like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, FTDNA? Okay, good. You know, I started out doing family history myself because I was curious about the lore and the legends that were passed down through my family. Led to a lot of curiosity. Got started and doing my paper trail genealogy, doing the research, just like all of you have before in the library, at the computer, and it's very tedious work, but you know, in the end, you have your results in front of you, but we do end up with brick walls, we end up with these dead ends, and we want to be able to take and find out a little bit more about that. That's where the DNA test and combining the two and making and using genetic genealogy becomes extremely useful and helpful. So the three tests that I'm going to talk about here mainly are Ancestry, 23andMe, and FTDNA. Now, these are all tests that you can pick up for $79 to $99 depending on what sale they have going on. The thing is, you're going to get what you pay for. Now, this isn't a $300, $500 DNA test. What they're doing is they're going in there and they're doing millions of these tests. They're going to try and blow them out, give you results quickly, make you happy, and they're not expecting us to become enthusiasts about this, but it does. What they're doing is they do have a good program. There are pros, like I said, for using Ancestry.com. All of you, and for those that have not only do you get a ethnicity proportion that comes back as your graph that shows you what your ethnic breakdown is going to be, it'll also give you new ancestor discoveries. That's going to allow you to maybe hopefully fill some of these gaps or be able to put some of these folks that are in your tree or that should be in your tree that at the moment are not. Along with that, you also have cousin matching. This is going to pair you up with first, second, third, fourth, fifth cousins you never knew you had before. Hundreds of pages of cousins you never knew you had before. The interesting thing about this is if you make good use of these contacts, this can help you in your research. If you reach out to these people and you send them messages, I've sent hundreds and hundreds of messages to cousins, and honestly, I've maybe had a 50% return rate for people getting back to me. Some people just want to take the test and find out what their ethnicity is, and excuse me, Nick, can I have some water, please? They just want to find out what their ethnicity is and don't want any more with it. They don't want to continue to contact with others. Thank you. So, in using those cousins, in reaching out, you can actually go into specific searches through there and you can find out and search your cousin matches through a specific surname. You can go into the little search bar and you can type in, I'm curious about my Martin, say dead end. So I'll type in Martin in that search name and I'll pull up a page of maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 50 different cousin matches that all either share that surname Martin. That gives you an extension to search on. These are all great tools. But like I said, you're going to get what you pay for. $79 is going to give you $79 results. I think of it, have you ever seen a results of a heart monitor or EKG? It comes back with all the points, lows, highs, midpoints as your heart beats. That's kind of what happens after you get your saliva sample. They get a chart back that has these different points up and down on the chart. They're going in and they're circling the high points. They're not looking at these small little peaks down here. They're not interested in that. So what you're ending up getting is just that basic broad result of what your ethnicity is. You're going to see the European, you're going to see probably not what you're looking for. I'm sure a lot of you folks have maybe had a lore in your family of having a Native American in your family tree. If, in that case, when you took your ancestry results and it came back saying 0 Native American, you kind of questioned, said, well, is that story really true? Well, just because it doesn't show up in the DNA there on Ancestry doesn't mean it's not in you and your DNA. Now, there are expensive tests that you can go out there that can give you some of these results, and there are other things that you can do as well with what you already have. Now, you've taken that Ancestry.com test. You can turn around and have any of you heard of the program GEDmatch.com? Okay. Now, GED Match, what that does is that gives you a chance to look a little bit deeper into that same information that you got from Ancestry. What you're doing is you're going into Ancestry, you're gonna extract your DNA that you sent them. You don't have to do another saliva sample, you don't have to send anything else out. You extract that raw DNA file and you're gonna upload it into GED Match. Now, uploading it into that program, it's gonna give you a name, a number, a A11233, for example, and you can plug this number into their different tests that they have throughout. They've got an admixture program. Now, in their admixture program, there's probably a dozen different tests that you can run. Some of these tests are more modern, some of these tests are a little bit more ancient, a lot more ancient. What they do is they've taken a lot of the remains that have been dug up, the Egyptian remains, the Malta, Sweden, all the different burials and things that they're finding in these remains, that they can extract any DNA from the teeth, from anywhere that they can in the bones, and they're taking that DNA and they're comparing ours to that. Now, in doing this, we're having a lot of connection to past areas, and in GED Match, I'm seeing things come up that I never saw in Ancestry. I'm having connections to Brazil. I'm having connections to Egypt. I'm having all sorts of things. I'm saying, well, this wasn't showing up in Ancestry. Somebody's mistaken. And so it got me questioning things and saying, exactly how good is the Ancestry test? So I've taken a number of other DNA tests, and to be honest with you, I want to share with you a company called DNA Consultants. Has anybody heard of them before? One? All right. Well,
That's because of you.
DNA Consultants is, in my opinion, probably one of the best DNA testing company sites out there. You're going to spend a little bit more money, but they actually are using an accredited DNA lab. This testing facility is up to date on the latest standards in DNA testing. The results that they have are absolutely, completely different, because what they're doing is they have a much broader database than, say, Ancestry does. Ancestry can't really distinguish between Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, you know, a lot of the areas in Europe. To be honest with you, I was actually very surprised, because when my DNA test came back, it said I was 24% European Jewish. Well, I found that kind of odd, but okay, sure, you know, maybe that's what it is. In all honesty, they have a very, their database is so small that they're not able to take and distinguish between Asians that came over to Russia and to those areas and mixed with Jews and other people along those lines. And that's where my family came along, was more of an Asian background than a Jewish background. So again, the results I do not feel are quite accurate that come from Ancestry. But when you go into DNA Consultants, what they're doing, you're looking for Native American. Well, they've got it in their database. It's not just Native American. They've gone in and they've got a U.S. Cherokee mixed database. Now, they didn't have 50 Cherokee people come up to them and say, we're willing to give you our DNA so that way we can start a DNA base here so we can figure this all out. That's not how it happened. They were a little tricky, but they went in and they got a lot of the police records. Through the police records, they've been able to get the DNA and said, well, this person has a CDIB card for Cherokee Nation. They have 4 out of 4 parentage there, and we're gonna use their DNA as part of our experiment. They've done that, and they've gathered up enough of these that they can distinguish a Cherokee population from the rest of the population. They can distinguish that from a northern population of Native Americans. So with their database is so much more extensive, it allows you to be able to connect to certain areas. When my DNA results came back from, I'm sorry, I turned my phone off so I wouldn't disturb anybody with it ringing. But while that warms up, my results came back completely odd and different from what I was expecting. And although they came back with what I was looking for, it did come back saying that not a percentage. That's another thing that they don't use with DNA consultants, is they don't go over a percentage and say, you're 10% Native American. They don't do that. They say you have Native American in your DNA. That is in your history somewhere, that is in your heritage. We can show you whether it's somewhat close or somewhat far away by showing if you carry an allele. Now, I don't have a lot of time to go into, to be able to explain definitions of what everything means from some of the terminology, but if you carry an allele, what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be showing that some of your parentage very close in from grandparent to great-grandparent probably was the Native American that they were talking about. Now, I got my results up, and my 50-row matches, these are actual areas in the world that I am matching to real life samples that came probably within the past 20 years. My #1 match was India, Gola, the Romani Gypsies. #2, Spanish, Menorcan. You can see they go specifics into this. It's not just Iberian Peninsula. It's not just saying you're Iberian. You're maybe Spanish, maybe Portuguese. No, it's saying Spanish Menorcan. And inside parentheses next to that, there's a little n equals 100. What they're saying there is we tested 100 people in that population that identify as Spanish Menorcan, and you're matching to them. #3, Singapore Chinese. #4, Moroccan Berbers. #5, Chinese Chao Shan. #6, Chinese Hui Nixia. #7, Thai. #8, Brazilian Sao Paulo. #9, Brazilian Sao Paulo. #10, Chinese Hong Kong. I expected myself to look different in the mirror after I saw these results. It really took me for a shock, and I started asking questions then, and I started going to some of my cousins and saying, what's going on here? Did you guys know about this? What did you think about this? Doesn't surprise us. What do you mean it doesn't surprise you? It surprised me because I was looking at ancestry results. They were sending me in a different direction. I'm not saying that they're wrong or bad in any means, but they do have their negatives, and that's in their ethnicity proportion. They're not giving you as detailed of a result as you can get from DNA consultants. DNA consultants, although, is not going to give you a cousin match database. They're not going to give you people to talk to and email and say, hey, how are we cousins? How do we relate? Do we share that Native American Michigan, that #11? Do we share that, through this line? You can't do that through there. That, I always say, if you're looking to just find out what your ethnicity is, and that's all you care about, you don't want to do the research, go right to this test. Don't even mess with the other ones, because you're not going to get what you're looking for. This will give you the detailed results. Another interesting thing that they have over there is their alleles. Through their alleles, if you carry a Native American marker, that's saying that you have that heritage very close into your family. I did not carry a Native American marker. My father did. And you can see that because my father carried it, you would think it would pass to me. It didn't. And the reason why, in my opinion, and a lot of other geneticists believe this as well, is that Asian is a very predominant trait, and that will almost powerhouse out some of the other ones that just barely hang on. And Native, unless it's something that's passed on generation after generation, intermarrying Native after Native after Native, what's going to happen is eventually it's just going to wash out and it's not going to be there anymore. A lot of us are searching for something that was in our second great grandparents' generation or maybe even beyond. And when it gets that far back, I always say, think about this, we're a shot of whiskey. And then every generation that we marry European, add a little water to that whiskey. 5 generations now, we're down to us. How much whiskey is left in that glass? Just a little bit. It's murky, but it's in there still. So with a good test like DNA Consultants, we'll be able to find out what that is and what we're looking for. Now the other thing is, you cannot use this to claim citizenship. DNA is not used to do that. I know a lot of people are looking to get their card. And I tell a lot of folks, you know, I'm not saying it's not possible, but if it hasn't been done already, there's a good chance that it's going to be very hard to do or very hard to find. A lot of these families were on the Trail of Tears. A lot of them, you know, are on previous records. You can find them on the Miller roll, the Guyan roll, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. Well, you know what? They disappeared for a reason, because they walked off that trail to start a new life, to start a new family, to ultimately give up their being Cherokee or Shawnee or whatever, you know, whatever family tribe they came from. They gave that up for us to be here today. And you have to think about that. We all live a pretty good life and have had a pretty good life, hopefully. And, you know, with that, we have to thank every generation for all the choices they made and for who is in our family tree. Because if they weren't there, we wouldn't be here. And we have to think about that. Now, again, I can jump around and I get off subject, and this is why it takes me 2-3 hours to have one of these discussions here. You know, another great thing that they have at DNA Consultants there is a rare genes from history test. A lot of these are pulling some of these older results. This is where I see a very big connection with GED match, because a lot of their tests that they have in there are older tests. Now, when I took this, I ended up coming back with a rare gene. They called it the Egyptian gene. I had to call them up and ask them and said, guys, you know, you said that you're pretty lucky to get 1 rare gene from history, and I got 5. What does that mean? I said, wow, let's look at them, let's see what you got. So they said, I've got to say, you got Egyptian. And I said, yeah, pretty cool. And, you know, she says to me, she goes, you know, the rarity of this is there's only about 6% of people in the US that carry that gene, and you're one of them. And I said, wow. She said, the majority of them are in Egypt still. I'm thinking, okay, that's quite interesting. Well, when I take the GED match test and I pull a lot of these and it's showing 50% of it's showing Egyptian, well, that kind of makes sense to me that somewhere way back down my line, outside of my family tree that I can figure out and follow to, there were definitely some Egyptians in there. Now, they also have, I always tease my wife all the time because they have Akhenaten and Thuya, and if any of you know your Egyptology, you know, these were some of, not, I don't want to say the gods, but you know, they were the pharaohs of the Egyptians, and as the leaders of them, you know, they were highly looked upon. And I always say, my wife ended up matching Akhenaten, and I said, oh my gosh, I knew it, you know. I come from the peasant people and you come from the big rulers there. I understand. Guess I'll do the dishes. So, you know, another interesting thing that came up from this was one of the rare genes that said it was called dream time. And I said, okay, I've heard of dream time before. That's Australian. And so as I started inquiring about that and questioning that, they said, you know, this is another one of those rare genes from history that you have. And she said, just because you carry this doesn't necessarily mean that you have Australian history, because a lot of times that'll rise to the top on your 50 matches. I said, oh, okay, too bad. And so she says, but if you think about it, the people that make up Australia came from somewhere, and they came from one area predominantly in Africa. And these are the same people that you must be matching to, the same group that split up, part went there, and your family just stayed. And I'm thinking, okay, that's pretty interesting, that's pretty neat. Well, of course, I had to get my parents to do this, and I lost my father in April, and I'm really glad that I got them to do these DNA tests for me beforehand, because without this, I never would have had the opportunity to find out some of the things, to find out my father carried a Native American allele. These are all things that I always say, you know, you can question it, you can say, oh, it's not, it's a thing about money, it's this or that, you know, and put it off, and eventually it never happens. You have to do it, and if it's not just necessarily for you, think about the future generations you're doing it for. The next genealogist in your family might be in 3 generations, and when they pick it up, they want to know what's going on, and you left a bit of your history, a piece of you behind, a piece of where, you know, like I said, every generation, you're pouring a little water into that whiskey. So what you're doing is giving them a look into that past of who your breakdown was, what your ethnicity was. When my mother took this DNA test, she showed a lot of Austronesian, and she ended up coming up with that in her main. Those are the islands above north of Australia and around Australia. That to me was just a shocker right there, because again, they said, well, it'll rise to the top and you're 50, and if I didn't have it, I'm thinking, well, it must not be there, it must be from that African subgroup that they're talking about. Well, no, my mother carried Austronesian. My mother also carried East Asian in her top 10 mains, which in fact, I didn't even pull East Asian as them saying that was my main. They actually, for a while, questioned if that wasn't some Native American admixture in me. And sure enough, my mother carried the Asian. So there's a lot more markers that we don't know that are in us, that if we have to look a little bit deeper, and we have to trust that some of these companies that carry a little bit bigger of a database that may cost a little bit more, actually do a lot more in-depth research on your genetics, and you're gonna get a lot more information out of this. Now, let's see here. Other than that, you know, we always question, we never know where we come from or what makes us up. My mother, she supposedly came from late immigrant parents. The interesting thing about this, when I got my DNA results back from DNA consultants, they were completely different, once again, from Ancestry and hers. DNA consultant said that my mother carried Melungeon. Now, I don't know, how many of you here have heard of Melungeons before? Okay. Now, there are specific families out of East Tennessee that consider themselves or carry Melungeon ancestry. A lot of these surnames are Gibson, Sizemore, Collins, Goins, Boland, Bunch. And, you know, the interesting thing was I could trace 3 of 4 of my grandparents out very easily. Well, not very easily, but to an extent. The 4th one, all I had was everybody else's account of her and where she's from. Never her own paperwork, never her documentation of coming over. So I just went along with it. Well, sure, they said she's Irish, of course she is. Well, why wouldn't she be? She's from North Ireland, it says so on the paperwork. Well, it made me really question this because, like I said, I never had any personal documentation from her. It was hearsay, he say, she say. Now, when I got this back and said Melungeon, that made me question things and said, somebody lied in my family, which Melungeons are very notorious about that as well. Very secretive. And, you know, somebody had to have come from East Tennessee and come up to the Connecticut, Manchester area there, and ended up saying that they were Irish, married my great-grandfather, and that was the end of the story. They just went along with it, and that was what was said. Well, there's no way possible that she could not, that if she did not come from that group of people, she would not be connecting to these cousins. These are very close-knit. It's like Arkansas, you know, you get out into the hills, Mountain View, we are very tight-knit, close-knit. Everybody's my cousin there. We had to search town to find my wife because she was one of the few families I wasn't related to. And, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, you don't come from that area and just you don't just appear out of that area. It's not, you don't connect or tie into that area very easily. So somebody obviously left, and it leaves me more mystery, more research to do, another brick wall to go after, but it gives me a different direction to go to. Now, I'm gonna try and close this up because I'm sure you guys have a little few questions for me. I know I jumped around on topics a lot because I didn't have a lot of time to really get into specifics and pull out some slides and show you guys some different little tricks that you could do and show you what GED Match actually looks like. But for everybody that has not done GEDmatch.com, that has taken an ancestry test, I really suggest that you write that down and show up and sign up for that. It's a free program, like I said, but you can get deeper results out of your ancestry results. It'll probably give you a little bit more along the lines of what you're looking for. Some of my things said Brazilian, and again, you heard on the DNA consultants in my top 10, I had 2 from Sao Paulo, Brazil. So again, that gives confirmation to me that GED Match is actually working, that it's actually giving you a deeper look at your ancestry. So I'm going to tie everything up right here and allow you guys to ask as many questions as we got time for, and I hope I haven't bored anybody tonight. But thank you again for having me. Frida?
I just wanted to make sure that they understood that the GED, the GEDmatch, is free, and if you've done your ancestry, you basically download, without opening the file, your ancestry DNA to your computer, and then you upload it to GEDmatch. Takes about, what, 24 hours?
It takes about 24 hours to get full use of the program, but within probably sometimes 10 to 15 minutes, you should be able to get your code, and you should be able to go in and at least go through the admixture proportion and start comparing your results to that.
And on GEDmatch, they have Clovis, and what's the other? There's 2 different Native American ancestral groups that they've compared to, and if you have any percentage show up in that column,
I believe Clovis and Malta, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure.
But I was overwhelmed at how much I had in those 2, and I had 0 according to, and then I did the expensive one and came back 14.9%.
Since there are so many folks that have taken an ancestry test here, I'm also going to make mention about a couple other DNA programs that you can go and get onto websites. Excuse me, there is DNA Land. That is another one that you can also transfer from Ancestry for free to. The other one is called MyHeritage. That is another good one. Some of these here will also give you more cousin matches. They will give, I've had other people contact me through some of the other sites, which is kind of nice. I feel like maybe MyHeritage, more people have reached out to me than on Ancestry. And also, some of these actually give you different ethnicity results as well, which will give you some different proportions. Again, they're right along the lines of Ancestry.com and being one of those, like I say, kind of cheapo Ancestry ethnicity proportions. It's going to just be very broad and bland.
How much does the DNA consultant cost?
DNA Consultants is, let me see here, I believe everything comes out to about, I believe the Rare Genes from History test is about a $50 test. What I recommend doing, and I'm not trying to sell this for anybody other than, the fact that I think it's a really good program, is that you can get on there and you can do a Irish test, a Melungeon test. You can do individual tests and they're $99 each. I suggest instead of doing that, just do the Fingerprint Plus test, because what it's doing is that test plus all the others. And what's going to happen is you're going to get the Melungeon test back or the Native American test. Say, well, I'll just do $99 of that. And they're just going to give you your 50 world matches and say, yes, it's there, or no, it's not. And you're going to say, was that all I get? That's nothing. But I think it's about $249. And that's what you'll be getting for the Fingerprint Plus. And in doing that, the results you're going to get so much more, because they're going to end up having population maps. They're going to have the ethnicity chart for you. I'm sorry, I said.
The discount code, I think I might have some interest in it.
Okay, give me 1 second here.
Okay.
I can get a 10% discount for everybody on there because I bought so many from them and I've just bugged them. Okay, when you order, if you put in the code DNA PLUS, DNA Plus, that'll give you a 10% off on the DNA test. So save you a little bit off the top there. And again, that test right there, you're gonna get less of the, you're not gonna get any of the cousin matching, but you're gonna get that deep ancestral result. So if you have somebody in the family that, is also very inquisitive about that stuff, but they're not the genealogists, they're not wanting to do all the research and do all that Ancestry continues to offer you, tell them, say, hey, you guys might wanna just check this out. Skip doing the $99 test and jump right to this, and I think you'll be happy with your results. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Is this a spit test?
This one, good question. This one is not a saliva test. It's not a blood test either. Trust me, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would hit the floor. This one is actually a skin cell test. So what they do is they have cheek swabs. There's 4 cheek swabs. You take them and you do 2 per each side of the cheek. You rub them around for about 10 seconds or so. Really just feels like something's lightly scratched you up. It doesn't chew you up or anything like that. And you take those, they go into a sealable bag that comes with everything all pre-marked, pre-labeled. I believe there is a form that you fill out and sign beforehand. You stick that in the prepaid envelope box, mail it off. I always tend to do mine. I try not to do it on a Friday or Saturday, so that way it sits in the post office all weekend. And I'll always send mine off on a Monday, so that way it kind of gets there as soon as possible. And my results, all of our results have been coming back with, what do you say, a month's time, is it?
The past 2 have come back within a month or less.
I'd say 3 to 4 weeks, and we've been getting our results on a lot of ours lately. So, again, that's definitely something I would suggest all of you to do, because it seems like there's a lot of interest. It seems like there's a lot of people here that maybe have had some stories, some different things that they were looking for in their DNA, and I guarantee this will probably put some closure to what you've been searching for, and give you a direction to look, a right direction to start looking in. So, yes, ma'am.
Do you have any experience with the 23andMe?
Very little. Again, I've noticed that they also are a company that can transfer over to GED Match. I want to say their proportions are pretty much right along the same lines. I've got a cousin that has done that, and I've got access to their results, and to me it seems right along the lines of what Ancestry does.
Okay, because I had gotten a newsletter about their V5 chip.
Okay.
Which obviously they weren't happy with, and they said for half the price you can go to Ancestry. But on 23andMe you have to upload it through Sterling Hill.
Okay.
Because, the government shut them down for a while.
Right, they did. And I believe that was all over their medical stuff that they were putting out. I believe their medical reports they were putting out.
Medical records.
I
Yes,
think so.
yes,
And that's why you were having to go to Sterling Hill to get some information.
right. And again, I was so glad to see as many Ancestry hands pop up today as I did, because that is probably one of my #1 most used programs, because I keep my family tree there. I keep, it keeps continually updating my cousin matches for you for free. Aside from having to pay for your family tree, it's a great way to store everything, keep all your information, have a mailbox there specifically to not junk up your other emails, and it's a great working platform, and it does work for the genealogist in doing that research. But there are other tests out there and other programs, and what we need to do is we need to spread ourselves out amongst as many of these as we can. Like I said, I'm having people that are getting back and emailing me through MyHeritage that were never on Ancestry. These people just took a MyHeritage test, so they weren't ever going to get on. They weren't ever going to do 23andMe. This is one of those things that, this allows us to get a broader range of cousins that we can get in touch with. And in doing this, this is going to give you more opportunity to have more people researching a line or an area that you're lost on, that you're looking for the help. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
There must be millions of Martins. How in the world do they differentiate who is your cousin and who might not be?
You know, and the best way to do that, like, again, you're gonna find out there are so many Martins, and you may be matching somebody through DNA that you can say, well, we must be matching through Martins, but all along we were really matching through Pogue over here. And, you know, it just so happened they had a Martin and you had a Martin, and you guys share a common DNA, but it wasn't the Martins, it was a different shared DNA. So, you know, you have to be aware of that, and you will get some of those in your tree. And what I do is I star them, I mark them, I put notes in. There's a section that you can add notes, and you can add in notes as to what family you're connecting to these people through, or what leave a note saying I supposedly maybe connect through Martin here, question mark. And I leave that for myself, so that way I can always go back, and in the future, 3 weeks from now, I don't remember whose I looked at. There's all sorts of new matches up there to look at. I can go back and, oh, I starred this one. Why did I star it? Why did I leave a note here? And, okay, these are, you know, this was a Martin hit, so I'm going to continue to go after that. And you just have to kind of narrow things down. And that's why I say it's good to reach out to these people, because, you know, you might not, my Martins are dead ends. And, you know, I may be DNA connecting with you, and you have Martins as well, but yours are extremely well documented and go all over the place. You know, I may come to find out that connection through there, or we may have had 6 other connections on there, not only Martin, Brown, Hayes, all sorts of other names, and we may have found that that's where we connected. So the ones that just show up Martin as your only shared surname, that's a good start for you to start looking at and contacting those people. The more people we reach out to and contact, the more chances we have to find that bite or find that loose end. Yes, ma'am? Yes?
I've been hearing that on the DNA test, on a female, it only goes back on the mother's side of the family. And the reason I'm wondering is, my mother was from Scotland, so I know all of my history on my mother's side, but my father was Native American. But I was taught to keep quiet about it.
Right.
Don't speak of it. My grandfather changed the last name, which I don't even know.
Right.
The real name, so.
I understand my family changed their name too. I really don't know what we are either. So, you know, it's one of those things that, oh goodness. Let me see here. Yes. The difference is these tests, Ancestry, 23andMe, those are autosomal tests. That's drawing from your mother's line and father's line both. That's going to be anybody. If anybody takes that, your brother, your mother, your father, your sister, you know, anybody that takes that, it's going to come from both of the parents. It's not going to show you which side comes from which, but it's going to come from both parents. Now, there are other DNA tests. You have a M-line test, a maternal line test, and a Y-line test. Those are specific for mother's line and ancestry and your father's line and ancestry. Now, being a male, I can take a maternal line test or a Y-line test. But because you're female, you can only take a maternal line test. You do not carry the Y DNA line. That's what, you know, I remember back in elementary school, they were trying to teach DNA and the 4 different scenarios of what you could end up as. And, you know, it was the XX, XY, you know, there's only a certain pattern that you can carry. And so you only carry the maternal line, and that's all you give. But if you had a brother, now your brother would be able to give you your Y line. If you had an uncle, they would be able to give you the Y line. But it has to come from that direct line to find that. Now, that's how I found out that I wasn't really an Engle. My family always had lore of, we were from Kentucky, we maybe got in some trouble, maybe killed somebody, changed our name, moved over here, couldn't take it, got bored, killed somebody else, moved over here, ended up in Arkansas. You know, it was one of those things I'm thinking, oh great, do I really want to research this and find this out or not? And, in doing this, it was interesting because I did that Y line test just because I wanted to find out where that Y line descended from. We were supposedly Engles. I took the family names and through documentation, through census records, and I brought it back to Germany. I brought it back to Solange in Germany, to the sword maker, Caspar Engle, that's right. I'm so glad my wife's here. So Caspar Engle, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, this should be an easy trail to follow. We're gonna match up with all these other Y-line descendants, Engle descendants that come back with their results, and they give you a little code. And each code represents the different area that family came from. I'm expecting it to come back R1, B1, something which is a very European haplogroup, Germany, France, that sort of area. Mine comes back as G2A, and I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not what all the other Engles are having. So I get to talking to these folks, and I said, I'm kind of confused. How does this work? How come I'm not matching any other Engles out there? Well, I ended up matching another Engle. This Engle was out in California, and I'm talking to him, and he's GM201, and I'm thinking, wow, this is wild. You're coming from the G's, and I said, you don't have any connections back here in Mountain View, do you? Well, yeah, my great-grandfather, I think, is from Mountain View, Arkansas. I said, oh my gosh, okay, so you must come from my line of Engles here, and you're a G also. None of us Engles here are matching with what we're supposed to match up to. G2A and GM201 ended up coming from Caucasus and those regions. They say they were some of the early out of Africa that went up to the Caucasus mountain region and stayed in the mountains. Never left for generations, and influxes that continued to come out. And they were some of the first to cereal and grain farm and domesticate animals. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, we've got horses, cows, a big domestic farm, and
You love bread.
I love bread. I love the mountains. I understand when my family came to Mountain View in 1840s, 1850s, and never wanted to leave. So I say it must be genetically in me because I'm G2A, and it's one of those things you never know. But if you have some sort of a questionable lore, or somebody may have changed their name, that's a good way of determining it, because Engle is supposed to be a German last name. We were supposed to be able to take that back to this certain person. Well, we're not matching any other descendants of that known person. So somewhere along the line, we've changed our name. I can DNA connect so far on my Engle line on Ancestry, and then all of a sudden, it just stops. And when it stops still pretty early on compared to my other DNAs continue out. I question that and say, is that where it happened? Is that where that generation before somebody snuck around? Somebody was away at war and somebody came by and unwillingly, you never know what the story or scenario was or what it was, but if it wasn't for them, and wasn't for them being in my family tree, I wouldn't be here. So whether an Engle or not, whatever I am, I could be eagle feather. That's one of those things that we never know who we are, but this gives us an identity. It gives us a way to look into what our genetics, what our ethnicity, what our makeup is, and find out, in a sense, where we come from.
So for people that haven't done any DNA tests, do they need to start with Ancestry and then branch out, or just what?
Again, that's that question that I have to ask and say, how far do you want to go with this? Is this something that you're just looking to get your ethnicity report to be able to say, this is me, this is what I am, and be able to hand that over to somebody and say, these are my top 10, these are my world populations, these are the alleles that I carry. And have that be it. If that's what you're looking to do and you want, I would go right for the DNA consultants. If you're looking to do all the family research, I think it's helpful to have both of those under your belt. In my opinion, I think it's good to have Ancestry if you're wanting to do the actual legwork, the contacting, the family tree research. If you want to do that, it's a most useful tool. most useful. Aside from that, it's also nice to actually have a good, strong ethnicity report and to know exactly what your makeup and breakdown is. And you're gonna get that through DNA consultants.
So it's good to do more than one.
It's good to do more than one. And like I said, it's also good to be able to take advantage of what Ancestry can do. And that's being able to put it into other programs, putting it into DNA Land, putting it into MyHeritage, putting it into GED Match. When you can do that, you're opening the door to more sources, more contacts. And furthermore, you're gonna be able to extend your research. You're gonna be able to spread yourself out as far as you can. That's the key to it.
I'd like to say if anybody has Facebook, Mike and I have a group that we've started in Stone County. It's called the Stone County DNA Project. You can contact either one of us through Facebook on that. Mike and I, either one of us will answer you
Yeah.
fairly quickly on that. And also, we haven't moved it over to Calico Rock yet, but I've been trying to do this for some time. I have about 80,000 people in my Ancestry.com tree because I write pre-Civil War history. So if I go out and interview you or your grandpa or whatever, then I do that tree. So what we're trying to do is to encourage people to become part of that tree. Instead of paying Ancestry for an individual tree, we pay about $600 a year, and we get all that international stuff and everything. And you can what you do on like your DNA, you make me an administrator, but it's really not me. You then log in, you go in, you're just on a different tree, and you're not paying Ancestry however much you're paying them. So what we're trying to do is it'll eventually be at the Calico Rock Museum. You'll be able to go in, sit down at the computer and work on it. We're also hoping to make it to where people can access it just anywhere. But right now we're trying to set it up just to be at the museum. But I give people my password and my login. Anybody that wants it, that wants to close their own account and move their stuff over into that one, because it's like Mike said, everybody in Stone County's related.
Yes.
And it's unbelievable how, I mean, it's like the Casey house up here. You know, I got to researching, and then they're all wolves, and they're, you know, so we are a small geographical region. So unless you've moved in from Ohio, or, you know, you're a migrant to here in the last 20 or 30 years, if you have people that are here, chances are I probably have somebody in your tree already in mind. And so what we do is we try to link those up where we can, and then you can just go in and access all your information, and you're not having to pay Ancestry on an individual basis.
And that's not limiting those folks that haven't had their families here, you know,
Right.
within, say, the past 20 years or so. You know, I mean,
Yeah, you
if
can go,
if
anybody can go in
anybody
and
can
set
come
up a tree.
and do that, so.
Yeah, you can, right now, I think we have about 11 trees under my, I say mine, because I'm still paying for it right now, but I think we have about 11 different family trees, because each person that's done their DNA wants to set up their own tree. That's fine, and you can set it up, you can do it, but I'm also linking them to that main cruise tree, which we're gonna eventually call like the Ozark family tree or something, you know, for a local tree or whatever, because that one then connects, you can see relationships between people. And that's, to me, that's what I wanna know. I wanna know Mike's my first cousin, 6 times removed by my uncle, by the, you know. So there's some crazy stuff in there that you can find out, which is really cool. But just so you know, and you can contact me or Mike on the Stone County DNA Project.
Yes, and if you guys ever have any questions,
DNA project.
Stone County DNA Project.
And that was just because we didn't have a better name for
That
it
was
at
it,
the
that was it.
time.
We were just trying to throw something together quick, and it just stuck, and next thing we knew, we had a whole bunch of followers, and we just decided never to change
And
it.
we get questions, and it's interesting because people from like California or
Yes.
other places will say, I've got family in Stone County, do you know? I got a box of photographs from a lady that figured out who I was through all of that. Pictures of my grandmother and my great-grandparents that I'd never seen. And she had married a cousin, and when he died, her and none of her kids wanted any of these pictures. And so
I think that right there is
they sent them
exactly
to
why we do
me,
this.
and my sister, you'd have to know my sister, she's the Stone County Historical Society, she said, and just why did she send them to you? And I said, because I'm the one on Ancestry. So,
Did you share them with her?
I gave them all to her, I kept two. I gave them all to her because she really is our family historian. I am a pre-Civil War Ozark historian. I look at families that have been here prior to the Civil War. Anyway, didn't mean to take Mike's thunder, but I wanted y'all to know there's a lot of good things going, and we don't want everybody out there spending their money, you know?
That's it. We're trying to save you, and by me and my wife going out there and testing, doing all these things, you know, and I wish they would send them to me for free and to be the little guinea pig, but, you know, I'm just doing it out of pocket because it's what we enjoy. It's what we're in search of. It's the fastest, you know, biggest growing hobby in the world is genealogy. And I've got the bug, I'm hooked. So again, I'm going to, as long as I can afford to do it, I'm gonna try and do as many of these and be able to give you comparative results and let you know what to spend your money on and what not to waste your time with. And really, right here, we've been able to taking one DNA test, an ancestry test, turning it into 4 different DNA tests and put you into 4 different groups that you can be able to make contacts through and be able to connect with people. And then also gave you a top-notch, accredited, best there is DNA test that's out there to give you the matching and results that you're looking for, that you're trying to get out of the ethnicity. So again, I think that between the 2 of those and all the little packages to go look at, you know, DNA Land, the MyHeritage, the GED match, I think that right there is the ultimate package to do right now. That's, I think, plenty to keep people busy. It keeps me busy. And again, as things continue to come out and go, I'm going to continue to test them and try them, and I'll keep letting everybody know. So, do we have any more questions? Or
Just one
is
question.
ma'am?
How do you approach these people who are your proposed cousins? Do they think you're a con man, or do you
You know, I've questioned that before. I've had a lot of folks actually come to me before, and you know, some of them had said, you know, I was adopted at birth. I didn't know my parents, and you know, I've had 3 or 4 of these come to me, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, is it like really just like this prominent in my family is here, or are these somebody trying to get some money out of me somewhere along the way? You know, you're just send me $39.99, and it never was. It never was like that.
Just want to know.
And yes, exactly. So the way I approach people is I say, I stumbled upon your match here as showing that we were second cousins. You know, I try and go for the close-in ones first off, because some of them, I should know you, I think. And so I'll send them a message and say, listen, I was just curious, we're very close-in cousin matches. These are my family's surnames, and I was just curious, do you share any of these surnames as well? Do you maybe have any information that could help? Because this is kind of a gray area on this side of the family for me. And I'll send something like that, and they'll come back with results. You know, same for us. This is another one of those very quiet side of the family. We never talked about this, or, you know, but this must be where we're related. And, you know, some of them we can do a little more digging. I actually had a cousin contact me out of Canada, and I just kind of went back and forth. Come to find out, she was showing second cousins to my mother. And I'm saying, well, that's pretty close in. We should know you. We don't know of any Canadian relatives. Well, come to find out that my grandmother was cousins with her mother or her grandmother, and they all talked about Manchester, Connecticut, growing up, and these farms up there, but no names ever matched up. we could never make that connection there until we found some records. And it took quite a bit of research, but we found some records that finally put them as brother and sister coming over from Northern Ireland. And we were able to make that match. It took us about 6 months, but because that cousin match said, you're second cousins, I didn't want to give up. I knew it had to be there, and it had to be there close. So we finally dug in and we found it. And you know, that happens. That happens a lot, so.
Now, my grandson, we did his DNA because his father is adopted from Canada.
Yes.
And he had always been told that his name on his birth certificate was a particular thing.
Mhm.
And there's nobody with that last name coming up on as a DNA match to my grandson, all these other people. And we've, coming up as first and, I mean, like, this would be like a sibling to his dad. And they're like, we don't know of anybody, you know, they don't want to tell or something, but it's interesting because they're all just like, no, we don't know anything about, but the DNA doesn't lie when
That's
it
it,
says.
that's it. You have to, and you have to be prepared as well, because you never know what's gonna come. I've got a friend of mine who ended up taking one of these, and on there, all of a sudden, a daughter popped up. And he said, oh, I don't have a daughter. This must have been from college days. And, come to find out, he really kind of took a big step back, and it really scared him. And it took quite a while of me talking with his wife there and saying, come on, you need to do something about this. You need to talk about this. You know, a lot of times these people just want to know. These people want to know and say, where do I get this humor from? Where do I get my good looks from? Where, you just want to find this out. So, some of these mannerisms, it's genetic, it's passed down, Why do I do some of the things I do? Yes, ma'am.
I've got a written family tree for my father's family.
Yes.
That goes back, it's in German.
Uh-huh.
I've had it translated, but it goes back into 16 or 1700. Now, obviously I can't get my father's line, but my half-brother could.
Uh-huh.
And by that, could we go even further back, do you think?
I would think so.
Possibly.
It's possible. That's pretty far back right there. I mean,
Yeah.
and to have record
Of course,
through
it's just
family,
the
that's
direct
amazing.
descendants. I don't have other siblings
right.
out there, but
Right, but a direct line, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And if you did a Y-line DNA test, what that would probably do is that would put you in a haplogroup. It would give you, say, a G2A, R1B, one of those haplogroups that would put you in that Western Europe, in that
and
region.
it shows on the family tree when they were born and where they were born,
Okay.
the town they were born in.
Uh-huh. That, it would probably just give some confirmation to that. It's about the best that you could get. See, what I ended up getting with mine was, it said, you're G2A. And then underneath that it said, most common surname that you're matching up to, Billet. So, well, that's not my last name, it's Engle. This doesn't make sense. So, as I went in, I said, somebody along the line must have been a Billet. But that gave me another line to search for.
Yeah.
So I went back to that area where my family just ended, and I said, okay, let me look in that county for Billets. Let me look in surrounding counties for Billets. It gave me another means to search on. I never found anything, but it gave me something else to look at. What that would probably do is give you confirmation and say, the last name was Smith. It's showing here earliest known contact, 1555, John Smith, Germany, maybe to a specific, and you may say, that's exactly the region that my family came from. And that would put a guarantee and say, this family tree is right. This is very accurate. So that's about the best that you could do, unless, and that would have to be the half-brother to be able to take that Y-line DNA test. So.
You really do have to be prepared, though, for finding out information you really didn't want to find out. Prepared for anything. We our family's been well documented, just like this lady up here had said hers goes back to Germany. Well, on my mother's side, we had all this great information. And then when I did my ancestry DNA, I'm getting a direct descendant of this Surratt, S-U-R-R-A-T-T. Never heard of a Surratt. There's no Surratts in our tree. So it said that he was either my third or fourth great grandparent. And so I started researching. I went back to who the mother was, because we figure we know who the mothers are, right? So I go back to my third and fourth great grandparent, my grandmother. I go through the census, and oh, be darned, and there was the Surratt, 2 houses down.
He didn't stay there.
And I had to dig into that, and that's who my ancestor was. She was, and just like and it was in the Civil War, and it was that family that housed John Wilkes Booth when he came out of, so I have now this unbelievable history that I knew nothing about. So you really do have to be prepared, because my sister and I are like, well, who is Surratt's? I know.
I mean, sometimes too, then you, I mean, I learned, I was adopted, and I did Ancestry, and I had my adopted mom. I know who my biological mother was, and she died before I knew her, but I have a sister. But anyway, so I had my biological mother's side, I put my adopted mom and dad in there, and I was working on my adopted mother's side, trees, and up pops this name, and I'm like, it was a DNA match, and I'm like, well, that's my dad. That was on my dad's side. And I was like, okay. So I discovered my dad was my dad. I believe anyway, because
And,
now
you
I
know,
have all of these.
Some of us may
names.
find our trees are a little more one-sided, and it happens. They just don't branch out. They just go straight. And really, it happens. It happens at Mountain View a lot. It happens all over the place. And you have to think about it. Back in those times, I mean, there really weren't.
Oh, well, this person wasn't related to my adopted mother. I didn't mean that. But that's how I found that I was related to my dad.
Right.
And then I'm talking to one of my cousins, and so then he's like older than I am, but he happened to be in the room with my grandparents and my father when they were having a discussion about me. And it was like,
Try telling somebody in Canada that one of their siblings is a sibling to your grandson's father. They don't want to hear that. So you really do, if you really are interested in your ancestry, you have to be open to whatever that DNA tells you, because
And the other thing too
they be
is
broad-sided.
just because you took the DNA test and didn't find the results you were looking for, even say with Ancestry, and you have brothers and sisters, don't think just because they're your brother and sister, they're going to come back looking like yours. Their results, I mean, I got my father and his sister and then his half-sister to do theirs. And when I did complete different results, I mean, you wouldn't even think that my father and his real sister were related by looking at their ethnicities, because, his sister carried East Europe and a lot of different places like that were nowhere in the charts on my father. And that's one of those things. We never know, just because you're a female doesn't mean you're going to carry more of your mother. You could be just like your dad. It's going to be a 50-50, it's going to be a 70-30, it's going to be different every single time. So you have to understand and think about that. I'm an only child, so for me that's it. They just did it right once, and what I got is what I've got, and if they did, maybe if they did had a brother or sister of mine, maybe that native allele would have passed to them, where it didn't me. You never know. So again, don't think that that you should be the only one to take a test. Get as many folks to do this as possible, and what that's going to do is going to expand our connections, because there are cousins that connect with my father that don't connect with his sister through the cousin matching. You can expand that and gain a lot more. You know, maybe my dad's sister is the one that actually connects to that Martin line we're talking about more than me and my father does. So without having her DNA in the picture, I'm losing some of my ammo here that I've got, and you need to get as much as you can and gather as much intel and information as you can for this, because that's what it is. It's a game of collecting this and sorting through the clutter and finding out what's right. Listen, I'm probably pressing time here. I see lights going out in the library. Does anybody else have any other questions? And if you don't, again, you can always get at me or Frida on the Stone County DNA project. Feel free to ask a question. We'll get back as soon as we can, even if it's something as simple as, I'm stuck trying to figure out how to log in a GED match. I'll try and walk you through it as best I can. So again, just feel free to reach out, and I look forward to helping and hearing some great stories and feedback from anybody. So I appreciate y'all for having me.